Okay guys, so today we're going to be learning how to calculate domain and range from a graph. I got you 3 different graphs that are in your notes, and we're going to talk about doing an interval and inequality notation. So we're going to start with interval notation because that's what we've been really focusing on. So remember, interval notation, you're looking from what x value to what x value, and we're using brackets or parentheses. So here, domain is always in terms of x. So I notice that my graph starts at x is equal to -2, and it ends here at x is equal to 0. So starting with the interval notation, it starts at -2, goes to 0. So now I just need to include brackets or parentheses. I'm going to put brackets around the -2 because that's a closed circle, and then brackets around the 0 because that's also a closed 0. To translate this into inequality notation, we're just going to use the alligator symbols. So remember, the bracket goes with the inequality that has a line underneath it. So it's going to go from -2 is less than or equal to x, because domain's in terms of x, which is less than or equal to 0. And again, there's a line underneath it because we have brackets and because that circle is closed. You can reference your 1.1 notes if you have any more questions about that. It's in there too. So that's domain. Domain's left to right. Range is lowest to highest. Now for these, we do look at our y values. So I start with my lowest y value, which is at -2. My highest y value is at +4. So again, -2 to 4, that's my lowest to my highest in y values. And then because this is a closed circle at -2, I'm going to use a bracket. And a closed circle at +4 is also going to be a bracket. So that's the interval notation. So the next is the inequality, same thing, starts at -2. My inequality is going to have the line underneath it because we have the bracket and we have the closed circle. We're talking about range, so I'm not going to use x, I'm going to use y. And so -2 is less than or equal to y is less than or equal to 4, because again, closed circle. And that's the domain and the range of the first one. Moving on to the second one, I have this open circle and I have an arrow that I need to account for. So starting with the domain is going to start here at -2, even though that's an open circle. And it's going to end at infinity. Remember, the arrow means infinity. Now, if you remember, for interval notation, if it's an open circle, it's always a parentheses. And if it's an arrow, that's also in parentheses. So that's my interval notation. Inequality notation is going to follow the same setup. It's just now, instead of having a line under my inequality, I'm going to have no line because I do not equal -2. So -2 is less than x is less than infinity. You could have also just leave it as -2 is less than x. They're the same thing. You don't need to add the infinity. So that's domain. Range is lowest y value to highest y value. So my lowest y value is at 0. And my highest y value is also at infinity because that arrow points up. Parentheses, because you can't equal the 0 because there's an open circle there, but you also can't equal infinity. So then my range, when I go to write it in inequality notation, I'm also going to use the inequality that has no lines underneath it. And remember, we're talking about in terms of y. So that's my domain and my range. Finally, the last one, this is an absolute value function, which we're going to spend a lot of time on in the near future. So domain, remember, is left to right. Notice that I have arrows on both sides. That means I go far left to the -infinity and all the way right to +infinity. So my domain is -infinity to +infinity. This is the same thing as all real numbers, which we denote with a double R. If I want to write it as an inequality, it's just actually the all real numbers. Or you could even go right, -infinity is less than x is less than infinity. So 3 ways you could write that. Range is lowest y value, which I do have a lowest y value. That's at -4. To my highest y value, which is again given by that arrow. The arrow points up, so which means it's going to keep going up to infinity. So the highest point that it's going to reach is +infinity. So my range is from -4 to +infinity. And then when I go to rewrite it as an inequality, Remember, I'm going to put a line under my inequality because I have that bracket and I have that closed dot, and then all the way up to infinity. And that's how we're going to write the domain and range.